Pinocchio, The Little Mermaid, and Peter Pan and Wendy are all films released by Disney this past year, which are remakes of previous Disney films, and all three have been pretty controversial, whether it be because of a race-swapped mermaid, or a race-swapped fairy, or a race-swapped pixie. Damn, there's a lot of race-swapping going on, but honestly, the controversies went further than that, with the films just not being received well at all. Pinocchio made the original story worse by removing iconic sequences and keeping the story overall the same, but without the magic animation gives it, alongside being destroyed by Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, released literally right after that film. The Little Mermaid, I heard, was one of the better remakes Disney had created, but the new sequences were the worst parts of this movie, considering they used the same story but added an hour of bonus footage. And Peter Pan and Wendy also removed iconic sequences, but offered some new and interesting things to the story, so I personally enjoyed it, but still recognize it not having the same magic as the animated film, and honestly, the majority of people didn't receive it that well. The next film to be released has already received a lot of controversy in the form of Snow White and the Seven Hunters. I'll get to that later, but despite this controversy, I think it will make for a better film, so welcome to Big Flick Energy, and here's why the controversy with the live-action Snow White is actually a good thing. Before I get started, I'm not referencing the controversy of a Latina being Snow White. I think you cast characters based on how well they can play the part, which is a combination of their talent for what they're asked to do, and if they look like the character they are meant to play. Sometimes a character's talent surpasses the looks and warrants a change in an iconic character's design, but honestly, Rachel Zegler doesn't even change the character's design, and even if Zegler herself is Hispanic, she has many similar features to Snow White, where I don't get why people are saying Snow White is now a Latina, and Rachel Zegler is actually just half a Latina. This is still a German character, where the last name Zegler is actually German, by the way, and she is being played by an actor that looks the part. So that's not the controversy I'm talking about. Instead, I'm talking about changing the 7 Dwarves designs to 7 random people. At first, I hated this decision because it removes representation of an important group on society who don't often get roles in the film industry. So to give 7 individuals with dwarfism important roles in a film would have been great. Peter Dinklage has made a statement against this, saying the 7 Dwarves is a horrible image for people with dwarfism. But I disagree with this because I think of how many characters based on race or gender have been casted because they look like a stereotype. This is your job, and if you don't want the role, you don't take it. But if you do want the role, you take it. If 7 people with dwarfism signed on for the film, I don't see how there could be any complaints. Well, actually I do, considering people complain about everything in films nowadays, but I don't think there would be a case for why people are mad. Like I mentioned earlier, you should cast based on a combination of performance and if the actor looks like the character, and I see castings like Little Mermaid falling under that, considering the voice Halle Bailey has is out of this world. But the casting for Tinkerbell and Peter Pan and Wendy didn't prove to be a casting based on performance, and she didn't look like the character, so castings like that I see as diversity baiting. So at first I hated Disney removing opportunities for dwarves to get roles in this film. But that all changed once I read this description of what was being done instead, posted by My Time to Shine Hello. The people that save Snow White in this version are called the Bandits. Jonathan, the male love interest, who isn't a prince, is also a bandit. The Bandits are like Robin Hood, they steal from the queen to feed the poor. Reading this, it changed my perspective because they're not solely changing the 7 dwarves into non-dwarves because it's controversial. They're also doing it because that's not the story they want to tell. From this, we already get 2 huge changes from the classic Disney film. One being the 7 dwarves are not dwarves, except for one, and are instead bandits, and the other being that one of these bandits is Snow White's love interest in the film instead of him being the prince. Based on this description, this film is giving me more similar vibes to a fusion of Robin Hood and Tangled than it is Snow White, and I have no problem with that. These are 2 films that I prefer over Snow White for being fun adventure films with great action that a film like Snow White could potentially benefit from, especially with Rachel Zegler's last major film having been Shazam! Fury of the Gods, where she played a goddess/superhero, and had to do some stunt work for action set pieces. Therefore, a more action-centric film could be exactly what Snow White needs to be successful. What Disney should want their films to do is to build its own legacy, whether it be through being as good as the original or better, or different from the original to create a fun new story. Looking back at the previous Disney live-action remakes, I'll separate them into 2 categories. Category 1 are films which were copies of the originals in most ways. That includes The Lion King, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Pinocchio, The Jungle Book, Lady and the Tramp, Peter Pan and Wendy, Dumbo, and 101 Dalmatians. Looking at these, one thing stands out to me, that none of these outside of Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast made their own legacy. I still think Jungle Book and Cinderella are good movies, and I also remember 101 Dalmatians because that was part of my childhood, but it doesn't really stand out as one of the most iconic movies. Also, that 101 Dalmatians movie came out years before, so that's when this remake era hadn't started yet. I understand direct remakes for stories like Aladdin and Little Mermaid, which will do incredibly well at the box office, even if you tell the audience it is a copy of the original, just longer. But for stories these studios know don't have the same level of watchability and nostalgia, that's when you should get creative with them, like this next list. Category 2, which are films which change the story being told, or key features of the story to create something new. This includes Maleficent, Mulan, Alice in Wonderland, Cruella, and The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which was an original story based on one of the shorts from the film Fantasia, where Mickey was famously in the sorcerer's costume with the broomsticks. Now, not all of these films are good. Actually, most of them aren't good, but I genuinely believe 4 out of the 5 are in many ways more recognizable than their original counterparts, and that's because they were different. Whether it be villain origin stories given a different take or prequel on characters like Cruella de Vil or Maleficent instead of making unwanted Sleepy Beauty and 101 Dalmatians remakes again, or if instead it's making a story more mature and with the style of Tim Burton in Alice in Wonderland, or if instead it's creating a completely original film based on one scene from an orchestral movie and somehow making your scene with a popular late 2000s song more well known to most individuals. Creating your own image is more important, especially with characters who don't have the levels of hype of Lion King and Aladdin. And all 5 of these original movies they've put out are on average considered to be worse films, but they're more recognizable to people today, which is what Disney should want. When I see people complain about these remakes, the most common complaint is, this is literally just a copy of the original. We want something that is actually original. We want new movies that are not just sequels or prequels or remakes or reboots. We want Disney to do what they used to do and make new films. That's why you look at a film like Moana and Frozen, and those do very well because those are original films. Now, obviously, recently Disney has kind of flopped with their original films, with Strange World, Turning Red, that those weren't perceived that well. But that is the biggest complaint that fans have of Disney with these stories, that they're just the same thing over and over again. Yes, Snow White is a huge character, but considering how similar in plots the early Disney princess movies were, with True Love's Kiss being the solution to everything, switching the story up, even if they keep that trope, will be great for the film. Now, this film needs to be careful because it does not want to be a copy of Mulan, which did creating something new the wrong way. When I think of the 2 best things from Mulan, it's the music and the dragon, which are the 2 things they removed from the live-action iteration. Sadly, this change of the 7 dwarves to the 7 bandits seems like the same issue, but it's a little different, because the characters and their personalities aren't gone, just morphed into different versions of themselves. In the live-action Mulan, the dragon was removed from the story, but the 7 bandits are in some ways still the 7 dwarves. The movie also doesn't have too many iconic songs outside of Whistle While You Work and Hi Ho, which I love that song, and they better not touch Hi Ho. And I don't think they will, since Rachel Zegler was partially selected for her singing performance in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story to take on the role of Snow White. So this is still going to be a musical. It's not going to be what they did with Mulan, where they removed all musical aspects of it. So if they keep the songs and change the dwarves to bandits, this film feels like a fusion of Tangled, Robin Hood, Snow White, and even a little bit of Shrek, where I don't mind this combination and change at all, and think it will actually allow this film to be more memorable down the line. I'm sure Disney sees how many people view each of their films and see their animated classics dominate viewership on Disney+, but the remake they tried to make different, for the most part, do better numbers than the remakes like Lion King and Pinocchio, because why watch a worse copy when the iconic and stunningly made originals are available on Disney Plus as well? This is why I believe, although a direct take with the Seven Dwarves would have been great to see, and there is a risk of this film being the next Mulan with straying away from what made the original work, it's still a risk worth taking, because it will ultimately be better for streaming and better for fans' perceptions towards Disney remakes. So thank you for watching, and please like, comment on whether you think this will be better for the story, or if they should have done the original take, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and see you all next time on Big Flick Energy.